This is the ultimate filament dry box. It is 100% 3D printed. The walls are transparent, so you can see your filament inside. And most importantly, it keeps your filament bone dry. But getting here was not easy. I have had to iterate and throw away 37 other designs to get here. So today I'm going to talk you through my quest for the holy grail of filament storage. So to understand what I'm looking for in this holy grail dry box, let's talk through the design requirements that inspired it. So number one, obviously it has to keep your filament dry. That's the whole point of the whole thing. Second, there should be room for a built-in hygrometer so you can tell at a glance whether it's dry inside or whether you need to replace the desiccant. Number three, they should be stackable and sturdy. Number four, I love my Qi 2 E1 dryer and I want these things to be compatible. Now they must be able to stack on top of the modular boxes that you can buy with the Qi 2 and that come with it, but it would be really nice. This is number one nice to have if you can dry filament using my dry box on the Qi 2 E1 dryer. Number five, there must be some way to know what filament you have inside at a really quick glance. Ideally, so the nice to have is that this is done with transparency so you can see through the walls. If that wasn't possible, there are ways around it, like asking the user to print a little swatch in the material and have some way to attach it. Number six, it must be cheap, meaning use very little filament. 7, it must be 100% printable, obviously apart from the hygrometer, but everything else has to be printed. Okay, what about the other nice to haves? Well, I don't want this thing to be an eyesore. I would love for it to look really nice, but not at the expense of function. Function has to come first. I want this to be small so that I can fit my obscene amount of filament in the smallest space possible. I want it to be quick and easy to print and convenient. I want it to fit on the smallest number of plates as humanly possible. And lastly, this is the least important thing for me, but it would be nice if you could print directly from it. Chapter 1, Learning the Ropes. So with the design requirements out of the way, I opened up Onshape for the first time. I created a project called Onshape Test, and I thought, oh, let's build this thing. How hard could it be? Now let me tell you the answer to that question. I started off with this bright idea of conserving filament, and I think this was the way to go. So I didn't print an entire thing initially when the whole thing might be measured wrong. I took some measurements of my Qi 2 box so that it can fit on it and the stacking all works. For example, from the bottom edge to this edge, and then this edge to this edge. And then, oh, what if we measure this corner to the circle and this circle to this? And I came up with this symmetrical design and I was like, oh, lovely, let's put it on the thing and see if it fits. And this thing just didn't fit where it should have. I think it was too wide. And I was like, oh my God, this should have been the easiest part of this process. Like, what am I doing? I then looked up like how to take measurements and I learned about datums. And I think that saved me at least a little bit. So one mistake that I was making is making this chain of measurements. But if you make a chain of measurements, then the errors can all add up. So what you have to do is define your datums, which are like ground truths. These are fixed things that you can take as true. And so my datums were the bottom edge of the filament dryer and this edge. And so I fixed how I was taking all these measurements. I would measure this, but then I would measure datum to this, datum to circle, bottom edge, datum to top edge of the circle, datum to the right, datum to the left. And then I ended up with version 2. Now, version 1 jaded me a little bit. I didn't want to waste this kind of filament, so I only printed half of it, but then this worked. I thought I was a genius for figuring out datums. But then I went back to like my measurements for this, and I think I was using a tape measure for this edge. I had read 16.8 as 17.8 or something. So the error was stupider than like datums, but this is the way to measure stuff. And so that's how I measured stuff from then onwards. This fit on the box, the little cone thing fits through there. That was in the right place for the little inset hole. Now version 3, I was getting a bit more confident with my datums, the first thing fit. I thought, okay, let's power through this. Again, I still wanted to save filament. I didn't print a whole box, but I printed a full layer that will be the base of the box. I realized that I don't have any purpose for these things. Like there is a feature in the dryer. Like there is a hole there, but I don't have to use it. And then luckily this also worked, and I was feeling good. I also added a tiny lip there, just because I was starting to think about like the lid and how it would fit for the first time. And I was thinking about how I would cover up these holes when they weren't actively used for drying. So I designed like a little thing, and I swear this had like a lip on it, and the idea was that this thing would fit inside there. But the thing I had there was way too thin, and so I had to enable detect thin walls before that would even print, and you'll see that in a second. Version 4. We are making progress quickly. So I've added a little lip here. I enabled thin walls, and you can see the walls there. I added these little covers so that it was airtight around this. So even from version 4, I did have these like lids that would fit, but these didn't feel very airtight because they weren't very airtight. Like if you just shake the box too much, these things would fall off. Then version 5, again, I am still making progress really quickly. So I made the cylinders into cones that look much better. I raised this up with the idea that this would make it much more airtight. I raised up this wall, and I started thinking in earnest about how the lid would attach to the base. I spent a long time studying snapping mechanisms and things. I thought that, oh, look at this, there's like a inset, there's a little triangle there. And I thought, oh, if the lid has like a complementary shape, it can snap on. I hadn't figured that out yet. So, but I was starting to think about these mechanisms. And then further down the line, I designed something that would become the lid. So the idea was that this had little insets that matched these, and this would go on, and this was going to be my lid. And then obviously it has to be 1,000 times taller, but this was just again to save filament during this quick iteration process. And then with all the rough building blocks in place, I was confident enough for the first time to print the entire thing. So I printed this. This is version 8. I even cut a little hole for the hygrometer, and I was so chuffed with this thing. It fit on the Qi 2 thing because of the cylinder things. Let me show you inside this. It has a lid which kind of functions. These things, they're sturdy now. Look how much thicker they are and how much more airtight that's going to be. They fit and they're strong. Oh, that was silica. That was not the thing that I said was strong. It is strong. So I was really happy with this thing. I even put some silica inside it, put the lid on, and it stays like surprisingly dry, even though there are some like obvious issues. So firstly, it's still PLA, so we can't see through it, and there's no way to put the samples on. And I realized that my lid idea, so I had these notches, and the way I was cutting them out of the lid was with a Boolean modifier. So I was taking this and subtracting this, but it ended up creating holes in it. And this could not have been very airtight, right? But despite that, this like really simple design was surprisingly airtight. So I could put filament in there, put a small bit of desiccant, and the relative humidity would stay low, like 10% for days. And another thing that couldn't have been helping the air tightness and the humidity tightness was the way the hygrometer attaches. Like this felt like an obvious point which might allow moist air to get in and ruin your filaments. So I was feeling good, and I continued making lots of these tiny incremental improvements, which brings us to version 9. And this was the first time I printed this in PEG-G to see how transparent it was and to help me figure out how I was going to do the transparency. So this is version 9. The biggest improvement here was that I just made this lid, this lip, whatever you want to call it, thicker so that there were no more holes in it. I didn't make any other changes that I can remember or that I've documented, but this validated that in PEG-G it still prints and works. These things in PEG-G, they still work as before, and this still does a weirdly good job of keeping filament dry, even though it's such a simple design. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the honeymoon period where things were happy and I felt I was making improvements, because this gets us into chapter 2, just one more rib bro, I promise, and the war on warping. So V9 was nice. Even though you can see the gyroid pattern, it is deceptively transparent. Look at that, you can tell what's inside this. even though there's like infill in the way. There's this design. Follow me on MakerWorld if you ever want to see this when I drop it. So this gave me an idea, like why don't we just make it much more transparent? And I went down this rabbit hole of researching transparency, printing some transparent stuff. I did an experiment with printing different temperatures and speeds. The biggest thing that I thought would improve transparency was getting rid of the infill gyroid pattern. I thought if I had solid PETG, then it would be much more transparent. The issue with making it solid was obviously filament use. So the first thing I tried is making the walls much thinner to see if it still stood up. It was so thin that you didn't have infill anyway. I think I didn't realize this and I set the infill to aligned rectilinear 100%. And then we got this. Now the really sad thing is that this is gloriously transparent. Like if I take this, you can see it. So when it's right up close, it's like it's right there. So there's nothing between. And then even if you move it back, you can still see that really clearly. But this was like, this wasn't gonna work, look at that. So firstly, it was warped to all heck, especially as it went up, like these walls were just too thin to like work or something. I had tried to add this thing here to improve the air tightness around the hygrometer, but something about it made it worse. I think it was the sharp corners introduced this like stress point. And I believe that this snapped when I tried to put a hygrometer in. So it did fit, but then something snapped and that. So that was version 10. So to improve the warping, I had the bright idea of asking a large language model. I believe it was Google Gemini. Let me tell you a thing about Google Gemini. It was certain that adding ribs to my walls would fix my issue. It was like,
God, just give it some ribs, bro. Give the walls some ribs. Just ribs, bro. Give it ribs.
So this is what happened when I added ribs. The whole thing was way worse. Like it lost some of the transparency somehow, even though the walls are still thin. And every rib became like a weak point. So these ribs, like they just all fell apart. Like look at this. Look, every rib is like a hole. Every rib is a weak point. Look at, what is that? And the worst part of this is that it hardly helped the warping. It helped a little bit, but there is still warping at the top. So it didn't even fix what it set out to do. So I made the terrible, terrible mistake of going back to Gemini and saying like, oh, the ribs reduced the warping a little bit, but like every one of them fell apart. Like, what's like another way to do it? And it was like,
bro, I promise, just make the ribs bigger, bro.
I was like, no, why am I making the ribs bigger? It said,
nah, bro, I promise, just make the ribs bigger. It'll fix the design. Just make the ribs bigger, bro.
I also realized that the ribs had sharp corners, which is probably causing those weak points. So I made the ribs bigger and I rounded the corners. And I don't know, it's like, it's way worse, isn't it? The warping is back like it's never been before, so it hasn't even fixed that. It's lost all its transparency for some reason. Even though the walls are still really thin, it's like less transparent. It's still a little bit transparent, it's PETG, but it's worse. And there still are these weak points around the ribs, even though I've like filleted them, but like these bits where it's too thin, you see, like it's not very strong. This thing, like if I push that too hard, that'll break probably. Oh. But the answer was not gonna be ribs. But I was at least making this thing stronger. So like filleting was way better than having those harsh edges. So I was right about that. I filleted around the hygrometer hole. And so this was stronger, but it was still, it's hard to see on camera, but you see there's a break there. So that's another thing that I had to remedy. So then I thought, what if the warping was just because the walls were too thin? What if I make it really thick? Okay, it's gonna use a ton of PETG, but when it was thick and it had infill, it was beautiful. There was zero warping. Like what if the warping was just from the thinness? And I decided to print it very thick with 100% infill, aligned rectilinear. And I wasted like probably half a spool just on this design, and the warping was back and it was as terrible as ever. That warping is bad. I don't know if you can see it very well on camera, but look at that. Again, it was really sad because it's so transparent when you have this like pure PETG. Like imagine if your filament was in there, and I'm holding this against the far wall. It's as far away as it could be from the wall. If I move it closer, it's even better. So this was version 14. It was so transparent, I didn't want to give up just yet. I wanted to give like thick walls another chance, even if it wasted filament. So version 15 was even thicker walls, 1.2 mil thick. It's still warped, and it was still beautifully transparent. I didn't want to give up this transparency, so I came crawling back to Gemini. Can you guess what Gemini said?
Bro, just give ribs a chance again, bro. You didn't give ribs a chance.
And somehow it talked me into trying stupid ribs again. And of course, ribs were like the worst of every world. So the warping was worse now. And even though I filleted them, it's like weak again at the ribs. Like, look, the ribs are falling apart. And I just like deleted Gemini off my computer. I didn't really, but I like stopped taking its advice too seriously. I don't know what happened to V16, but we're now on V17. There were other ideas, like I could have done like 45-degree ribs or some kind of structure, because I have printed very big bins which are very strong with no warping with these like 45-degree cross-hatched patterns, but I didn't know how to get that to work in Onshape and wrap around the corners. It's quite easy to do it on like one wall, but it's hard to wrap around a corner. Let me know in the comments if you have a solution. There is this thing called curve pattern. So you can pattern something along a curve, but the problem is that it doesn't distort the object, it just duplicates the object around the curve, but it's rigid. So if you had like a long rib that goes diagonally 45 degrees and it patterns it here, it would like float off of the box, if that makes sense. So this is where I swore off ribs forever, and I went crawling back to sparse infill. I kept it very strong, even though it wasn't as pretty. And this is where I started to question, do I really need transparency? And I started thinking about all these other ways around it. And this brings us to chapter 3, the Great Refinement. So just by ditching ribs and going back to sparse infill, I got the first box that is good enough that I can actually use it now to store filament. So there's infill, there's very little warping. There is actually a tiny bit even with infill, so I thought maybe I need to make the walls thicker, but there was tons of small refinements here. So the lid gets longer, again with the idea of making this more tight to humidity. The lid fits, that broke and I can't remember why. The hygrometer thing still is breaking, but like the box is steady, it's strong, and even with the infill, it's a little bit transparent. So can you tell what colors of filament are in there? Not very well, but there's something like, they're both kind of dark brown-ish, and this one is lighter than this one. I think you can tell that from the outside, and that is what the filaments look like. Version 19, I had sworn off ribs, but I wanted to keep playing with really thick walls, just like straight 100% filled for better transparency. And you can see like it's strong. Again, it's good enough that I use it for storing filament. You can tell that there is some orange filament in there. You can tell that there's no spool on this side, but they're still warping. If I haven't said this already, like please comment down below if you have better ideas for reducing warping, because maybe there is a trick here that I've missed, but we'll see like how I worked around this anyway. There was still weakness around the hygrometer hole, so a lot of work went into like filleting those edges and making them the right thickness and stuff. But yeah, this works. The lid was a bit tight. It works. And this is the filament that was inside. That is bamboo, PETG translucent, whatever they call orange. And this is when I had big decisions to make. Do I go back to the drawing board? Do I start from scratch? Do I try something completely different? But then I realized, what if the design requirement was stupid in the first place? So, okay, I want transparency, and transparency is nice, but do I care about transparency on the side? Because all you can see there is the spool itself. You can't see the filament inside it. So what if we only need transparency where it matters, where you can see the filament? Because that's the whole point of the transparency. So I had this idea that the whole box can be strong, infilled, no warping, and at the front, you have a much thinner wall where you can see the filament. And I printed this in PLA for ease. And I also had an idea, maybe this muddied things and made things like worse. But I thought, oh, and you could also print this in PLA and then get these like printed samples and slot them in. And then you can see what's inside no matter what. And I think there was promise here. So I pursued this. But there were still obviously issues. It was weak. These corners were sharp, and so it broke above there. You can see what happened there. The lid didn't fit well. There's no tolerance here. I thought I was being clever by making the lid fit into those holes. That was a whole problem. So what do? We iterate. Version 22 was the body and 23 was the lid. So 22 was PET G. The walls are thicker. There's tiny bit of warping, but it's much better. And this tests the transparency. And yeah, these things are very transparent, but there were still issues of weakness around them. So this was like one wall, it was very thin, so it broke. I don't know if you can see that it's broken there. The edge, because it's sharp, I hadn't fixed that properly yet, but this still fit. So yeah, you could do something like that. At least the lid was better. So I added some clearance or tolerance. Someone tell me down below. But I made the inner lip further away, so there's more room here for the box. And so it fits much more snugly. I then realized that I was trying to over-engineer it. I should decide, do I want the front thing to be transparent or do I want it to hold filament? I was trying to do too much with it. I decided that transparency was too cool to give up on. And if I give up on anything, it should be like the sample holder thing. I could always add these somewhere else, but these things on the front, they should be transparent. And also, this thing is quite ugly, isn't it? It's very utilitarian and in a bad way, I think. Now, if I had been watching Dieter Rams and if I had been learning about the Braun School of Design, I would have avoided this next monstrosity. I thought, how do we make the front prettier? Oh, what if we make it like a face? I did this stupid thing. This is the worst thing I've ever made. And the worst thing about this isn't even the print failure, it's this stupid face. So I was going, and then I instantly just I know why the printer failed during this. It saw the face as it was printing and it was like, nope, no, I don't want anything to do with this. This print is not going to succeed. The idea was that these holes, these eyes would be transparent and you can see through. The nose would be a hygrometer and then a mouth. I don't know why I gave it a mouth, but I thought this was a way to justify the design choices of the eyes. It failed for two reasons. Firstly, I hadn't dried this PET G. That's why it's bubbly and there's air inside it and it's frosted. But also, I think I was trying to print this with the 0.8mm nozzle and this wasn't really a job for it. I went back to the drawing board. I watched some YouTube videos about design. I like the idea of less design is better from Dieter Rams and the Braun School. And I thought the mouth was completely unnecessary. But then I thought the eyes and the hygrometer, they serve a function. I wanted to keep them because they're there for a reason. The hygrometer hole holds the hygrometer. The two more transparent bits that are thinner, they're there to give you windows inside to see what's inside. So I kept the functional elements, I removed the stupid mouth, and then you still end up with a face, but it's a much less stupid face. It is a little bit silly, but it's playful. You know, I don't despise this as much as I despised that thing. It's a little bit shocked, it's oh. But those elements all serve a function. The eyes help you see through it, and there's something nice about that. Eyes are what help you see, and eyes help you see through this. And because it's thinner there, just look how transparent this thing is. You can see strands of the filament inside, and it's really strong because I filleted the edges. So there's no weak points. You can press this really hard and it's strong. It is rock strong. We were back to Warp City for some reason. I then realized that I had printed this with the 0.8mm nozzle and the walls were only 1mm or something. So it tried to print the entire thickness of the wall with one sweep. And this used another half a spool of PET G. And this whole time I'm just chewing through this clear PET G and I keep reordering it. Another interesting thing here is you can see these pock marks everywhere. One way I got the eyes so strong is I made the seams random, because by default it puts the seams here because it notices a corner, but that weakens it, so you have to put the seams elsewhere. But random isn't the way to go. It gives it this ugly kind of finish with pock marks everywhere. But we're getting somewhere, aren't we? This works. Again, this is another one of the designs, because there's filament inside it, I'm using this to keep my filament dry. Look at that. And you can tell there's no filament here. So what do? We iterate. Warping is gone because it's the 0.4mm nozzle. I've dried the filament, so it's not bubbly anymore. But look how good that is. That is clearly purple. That is clearly green. terrible filament to show you while I'm using a green screen, but you can tell that, like, you can see the filaments through there. And then with the eyes, and it's even clearer. And this is when I thought, like, I think I actually will succeed in this design. The face is still there. I'm in two minds about the face. Like, it is silly, but silly can be a good thing. And it's so functional that I just don't see a better way to meet all of these design requirements. Like, this ticks all of the boxes. And you can see, even though I've been using this for weeks, it is at 26% humidity. I might have replaced the desiccant ones, but it is very airtight. And this brings us to chapter 4, which is the feature creep era. But it's also the era where we're making very small changes just to finalize exactly how this is all going to work. There's two things I'm juggling here. I'm juggling like the overall thing, air tightness, humidity tightness, and I hadn't given up on this idea of swatches just yet. So I thought, okay, they're not going to go where the eyes are because that's like trying to do too much, but what if we make a separate holder for them? You can tell that this sample is correct and this sample is wrong. But this was kind of ugly. I didn't like that it was like off center compared to the windows. And also I made this thing too thin initially and it like broke. So when I put a sample thing inside, one of these broke. So I had to fix that. I'm also thinking for the first time about like how this thing is going to dry on the Qi 2 dryer. So around this time, I used one of these things to physically dry filament on the Qi 2 dryer, and miraculously it worked, but I realized there were two other problems. So you can't have a hygrometer in there while it's drying because it'll wreck it, it'll get too hot. I could actually dry with the hygrometer missing and that big gaping hole in it, but then the moisture gets in too quickly when it finishes. And also if you're drying it, a really nice design choice in the Qi 2 dryer is that the plates that block the holes underneath, they go on from underneath, whereas mine, they go in from the inside. So to plug these holes, you'd have to open the lid, take both the filaments out, put the cover on, put the filament back in, and it gets wet in the meantime. Also at some point, I realized that I had zero need for the notches in the lid. It can just be straight, and if you get the clearance right, or the tolerance, the lid goes on, it's airtight, and like this comes off, goes on very easily. And to iterate faster, you can see that this is version 33 of the box, but 34 of the lid. So like while one is printing, I'm improving the design on the next one and it'll be a different version number. I'm playing with the smooth plate with the idea that if you print something smooth, it'll be more transparent. So maybe if the top is transparent, you can see through, and you can see through there, like it is nice. But again, I think this is too much. Like the transparency there is so good, like you don't need something else, and it's easier to print on the textured PEI plate. But I now have these things. So instead of plugging those holes from the top, the idea is that these would plug the holes from the bottom. So they're not going to go in because there's already something in there. These took a lot of iteration. They had to be just the right thickness. The design was kind of like tricky. There's different ways you can do this, but these improve over time. I then think to myself, okay, what if we get rid of the sample holder at the bottom because it's ugly and we put something else in the top? And I tried multiple things there. I experimented with a lid that was kind of like this, but these things were perfectly sized for these existing sample cards that I was printing. So they replace the eyes if you had printed it out of an opaque material. That meant that you had to make the lid very thick. So I ended up making my own little samples that became stupid little eyebrows. So that if you wanted to print this in like black or something, you could print my tiny samples and then you know that, oh, this is this. But again, how clear that is, you don't need that. Everything where I show you filament inside, it has filament inside because I am using it and it's useful. And this brings us to chapter 5, the final 5%. And this is where I would really love to hear what you think. Like even after I've launched this, I can iterate this and make it useful for the broadest number of people. This is version 38. You can see how transparent that is. You can see that orange really clearly, the red. This is my solution to drying with the hygrometer hole open. If you dry with nothing there. Like I said, wet air gets inside. So I printed this little thing that fills that hole. And because of that notch, you can control how much ventilation you allow in. So if you put it almost all the way in, you can allow just a tiny bit of ventilation, which lets the moist air escape as it's drying. And this thing can dry filament inside it. Now, one thing I'm worried about is warping of the PETG that makes up this thing if you dry it too much, but I will be running lots of tests and I'll share those results after this. So far, I've dried this for about 10 hours and it hasn't warped, so everything still fits perfectly fine. And look, you can see the holes underneath, and these things can plug the holes and they stay in place, kind of like the magnetic things on the official boxes. But this is completely 3D printed. You don't have to insert any magnets. You can just take these off and you're good to go. You can dry. I've kind of had an epiphany as I've been filming this video. I think the transparency is so good. I might just make it a requirement of this model that it's designed for clear PETG, and that makes it so much simpler because we don't need anything that holds sample cards. Now here, I've kept this thing where you can print these tiny samples and slot them in, but it's kind of, I got the size wrong, so we're gonna need at least a 39, unfortunately. But let me know below, can you live with a print that is designed for PETG, translucent or transparent, because you get this really nice transparency? Or do you need something where you need a sample of the material on the outside? Maybe you have lots of different oranges that look similar. Maybe you want to tell apart like a PLA wood from a PLA brown or something. Like maybe you want it to be even more obvious in a way that this can't get. But let me know. At the moment, I'm leaning towards one product for everyone. So one print profile, you click this, you download it and you print it in clear or translucent PETG, but I'm open to keeping something for people that want samples. And also, what do you think of like eyebrows? Is that stupid? I think it is stupid to have eyebrows. Oh, and I'm so silly. I've even made like a raised eyebrow and a lowered eyebrow so it can be like, huh. But then the alternative is, like if it's not eyebrows, if it's these things, my only concern is that it's a bit ugly. So I figured out in Onshape how to make this wall thicker without making the whole thing thicker. So I can put these things inside now, but they're just kind of ugly. I guess it would have to be a second print profile with no eyes. Yeah, let me know below. Do you want, as it is, it has to be clear. Do you want eyebrows or do you want a sample? And then do you want like one thing that everyone prints and you can have the samples with the eyes? Or if you're going to be using samples, do you want it with no eyes, stronger wall? Okay, it's not going to have to try to be transparent, and like that makes everything simpler. Okay, future Moby here. I have been putting this thing through its paces for the last 2 weeks. I have some results that I'm really excited to show you. But before that, let's talk about the changes in the last 2 weeks and my testing methodology. So we have needed a few more iterations and we're now on version 47, if I'm not mistaken. The biggest improvements are, we have a version now with a flat bottom. So if you don't have the Qi 2 dryer, you want to use this just as a dry box, you print this one and you don't have to worry about moisture getting in through those holes, even if you plug them. I've had to move this up a little bit for the Qi 2 version. And I had 2 of these where the bottom cracked, either when I was taking it off the build plate or when I was trying to ram something on. The bottom was only 0.6 of a millimeter thick. It's now 1 millimeter and it's way stronger. I'm also working on some shelving so that you can stack these really high and you'll be able to reach in and grab one from the middle instead of having to go from the top. And this will support both my box and the official Qi 2 dry boxes that come with the dryer and that you can buy separately. This isn't exactly ready at the time that I'm filming this, but follow me on Maker World so you can be notified as soon as I drop this. And also check the description and pinned comment. I will include a link to this once it is ready to go. Now, how have I been testing these dry boxes? The first and most important test is, do they keep your filament dry? So I've printed 5 of these just for testing. They've had different combinations of stuff inside them. So some of them have spools that have been dried. Some of them have spools that have not been dried. They're straight from the package. Some of them have the flat bottoms if you don't have the Qi 2 dryer. Some of them have the bottom that is compatible with the Qi 2 dryer to see if it's any less humid tight. Some of them have tons of desiccant, up to 250 grams. Some of them have much less desiccant, 150, 160, and one of them even only has 100 grams of desiccant. And then to test whether you can dry filament inside these boxes without them warping, I have been testing one of these boxes with the compatible bottom on my Qi 2 E1 dryer, and I have been constantly running drying cycles to see how much warping we get, if any, and after how long. So I wanted to see how well these keep things dry over a long period. So how did we do? Have we achieved the holy grail filament dry box? Let's go through our design requirements, starting out with the must-haves. It must keep filament dry. So how does it do? It keeps things pretty flipping dry. Every single one of these boxes, even with like the holes on the bottom, with non-dried spools, with small amounts of desiccant, they've all been rock steady at 10% relative humidity, which is the lowest that my hygrometers can read. So this is a graph that shows all of this. The purple line is the room humidity, so you can see that this is variable and it's between 40 and 60. Okay, some of them took different amounts of time to get to 10%, especially with not much desiccant, but they all get there eventually and they stay really steady. You'll see on the graph that I'm also comparing this with the official box that comes with a Qi 2 dryer, and that's also done a great job of going to 10% and staying rock steady at 10%. Now, I wish I could have ran this for more than the 2 weeks here, but I will keep running this and I will update the Maker World profile with the results. So stay tuned there to see how this does over even longer. Let's see how long it can go. Next must, it must have a place for a hygrometer, and yes, it does. It's this thing. Look at that 10%. This thing has been going since the 16th, so 12 days and counting. Number 3, are they stackable? Yes, I've successfully stacked these for long periods in stacks of 4 or 5. No problems. It feels like they can stack even higher. They are really sturdy boxes. And as I mentioned briefly, I'm working on this shelving system to allow you to stack them with little gaps in between so you can pull one out of the middle without rearranging your whole stack. That's dropping soon, so follow me on Maker World to be notified. So I wanted this to be compatible with a Qi 2 dryer, at least in terms of stacking. And yes, you can stack them with the official Qi 2 boxes and mix and match, and there are no issues. Do you know what's inside instantly? Yes, I'm really happy with the level of transparency I've been able to get. You can tell what color is inside at a quick glance without opening this up, without having to attach any samples. I wanted these to be cheap, using very little filament. They are very cheap. So because the flat bottom is a much simpler design, you can print 3 of those with a single 1 kilogram spool. If you want the Qi 2 compatible bottom, because it's a little bit more complicated, you can't quite print 3 with a single spool, but you almost can. And I wanted these to be 100% printable, and they are. So let's get into the nice to haves. I really wanted to be able to dry my filament on the Qi 2 E1 dryer using these boxes. So for the last 2 weeks, I have been just torture testing this specific unit. You can see this tally that I'm keeping, so I know how much drying and how many sessions I've done. I have done 17 drying sessions. The first ones were only 8 hours, but then I got impatient and I started doing 24-hour drying sessions and 20-hour drying sessions to really torture test it, and it still works. You can dry filaments using this thing. So not only can you put stuff inside, it dries, and then the humidity inside is like 5% according to the dryer. All of the fittings still work. The lid still fits, it hasn't warped. You can take it off and put it back on. All of these fittings still work. So that goes there and it's still like tight, it keeps itself in place. This still fits. If you're eagle-eyed, you might have noticed like a crack here, but I have like significantly thickened the bottom because I did notice the bottom was too thin on these. This still fits. There's a tiny bit of warping after 240 hours of drying, tiny bit of warping. So this thing fits a little bit more loosely. So you do have to push it in like a little bit tighter than you expect so that it doesn't fall out during drying. But actually I've done drying sessions with this thing off. The dryer has to work a little bit higher, but it does maintain dry conditions inside. And the bonus is you get a ton of venting, maybe too much venting, but it still works. Now the next nice to have, I wanted to know what's inside through transparency, and I think we've achieved that. So you can see really nicely inside, but there is like a caveat and a note that I will mention on that in the negatives in a second. So we know my boxes are cheap to print, but are they cheaper than the cereal boxes? They are. They're even cheaper than the cheap cereal boxes you can get on Amazon. So if you buy a multi-pack of 6 cereal boxes, I think this is the most common product that people buy. It's over $27 for the 6 boxes, which means that each box, which only stores 1 spool, costs over $4.50. So how does mine compare? Well, if you buy your PETG in bulk, as I do, then a 1 kilogram spool is $13.99. If you're going with the flat bottom, you can print 3 of these and have some filament to spare. And each one stores 2 spools, which means for that single $14 spool of PETG, you can store 6 spools of filament, which brings the cost of storing each one to $2.31, almost half the price of the cereal boxes. And I think looking purely at price, it's even better than it sounds here because of these small things like you don't have to print extra lids for mine, you don't have to do anything extra to mount a hygrometer, it's already incorporated into the design. So I'm really happy that we've been able to get it under the cost of cereal boxes, almost 2 times cheaper. Next nice to have, is it pretty? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I wish I could say it is pretty. It's not gorgeous, you know, like it could look better, but it's not ugly either. And like over time, I have grown to like this design. I'm gonna say we've like almost checked this. It could be worse, it could be uglier. It certainly has been uglier on the way to get to where it is now. And 5, is it small? Yeah, this is almost as small as it physically could be and still hold 2 spools. It's really compact if you want to store a large amount of filament. Now the next 3 are about ease and convenience of printing. I think this is actually really good. So, speed of printing. If you want the flat bottom, you can print the entire thing in under 15 hours, so less than a day. And even if you want the compatible bottom that is more complicated, it prints in about 16.5 hours. And the nicest thing about this is that you can print the entire thing in just 2 plates. This is the only box that does all of these things, but even if you look at other boxes that you can't use to dry, you can't see through them as well as this, they can take like 6 plates, 8 plates, they can be really complicated. So you can have this whole thing for 2 plates and that stores 2 spools of filament. I'm really happy that I've been able to achieve that. The 9th nice to have, can you print from it? No, you just can't at the moment. For me, it's not a huge priority at all. I print from my AMS. If I want to print from an external box, I sometimes use the external spool, or I can use the boxes that come with the Qi 2 E1 dryer. If you like this box and that's a deal breaker for you, like you would print it if you could print from it, leave a comment down below and I'll see what I can do. It should be possible, it just hasn't been a priority for me. So with all of that out of the way, have I built the holy grail of filament storage? I don't think so. I think I've done very well, and I hope that you find this box as useful as I have. I am printing tons of these and I'm using all of them, but there are a few things that hold it back from being the holy grail, because that is quite a high accolade to achieve. So we've talked about this a little bit, but the look is utilitarian, to say the least. It does a function very well, I think. It's designed with focus on that function, but I don't know. it could look better. I'm not comfortable calling this the Holy Grail because I think when you're going to be printing tons of these, you're going to spend some time looking at them. I wish there was a way to make it look better than this. So that's holding it back a little bit. Another thing that's holding it back a little bit more is that the lid is a little bit clunky. One design choice that I've made, and I think this has helped it get the huge level of like dryness that it has so far, is I've made the lip on the lid really big. And my idea there is that for humidity to get in, it has to travel a huge area. And this means I don't have to use gaskets, a TPU part to put inside. It's 2 parts, but it means for the water to get in, it has to come in on the outside through here, like past this. It has to go around the box itself, and then it has to travel this huge distance up here. But that means that taking the lid off and putting it back on is a bit of a dance. So you kind of had to push on both sides at the same time. And then sometimes like one corner sticks out and you have to push it evenly. And if you don't push evenly, it makes sounds like that are scary, but I don't think I've broken it. And then you push evenly and you get a really nice tight seal. But again, to remove it, again, you have this little dance. So you have to remove it evenly from every side. And then you do get it off. But this is one thing holding me back from calling it the Holy Grail. Because if you look at like the official Qi 2 box, look how much easier this is. Boom, you can access your filament. The third thing holding me back from calling this the Holy Grail is that in theory, maybe I could get a tighter seal if there had been a gasket thing, or like at least a rubber ring of TPU on the inside so that it like squishes and there's no path for air to travel inside. I wrote that before I started this test. I've actually been pleasantly surprised by just how humidity tight these things are. And as I said before, I will report on Maker World on the progress over longer periods. But this might not be a weakness. It's possible that this is just as tight as any other printed design, even over longer periods. And the fourth and last reason this isn't the Holy Grail, even though you can see inside really clearly and you can get a good idea of the color filament that you have inside, I've started printing with PLA and some PETG HF, which has finally come in stock after years. But it means that I have multiple spools that look like similar colors. And actually, even with this transparency, it's hard to tell them apart without knowing that, oh yeah, I put my PETG in here and I put my PLA in here. And even some colors that are in the same material that are very similar can be hard to tell apart. For example, it's hard to tell apart a silk blue from a PLA blue that's a similar hue. So I will be launching this because I put so much work into it and I think it is like useful, but I might have to revisit this whole like eyebrow idea. Like I might have to revisit creative ways to attach samples of the filament inside. I would really love to hear what you think about this. Are eyebrows stupid? How stupid are they? And if they're stupid, like where is a better place to have these samples? Because I can't see it. And also let me know if you would prefer a way to attach samples and if you think that's better than transparency. So at some point in the design process, I decided to go all in on transparency and put samples on the back burner, but maybe I have to reverse course. I want this project to be useful to as many people as possible, so I really do want to hear what you think. So even though I don't think this is the Holy Grail just yet, it's a damn good try. And I'm thinking of naming this after Tenacious D, like Holy Grail Filament Storage, a tribute or something. This is a tribute to the Holy Grail of filament storage, which I had in a dream, but it's not quite it because it's made by a mortal like me. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I really hope that you get some use out of this if you're looking for a filament dry box solution. If you like this video, I think you'd like my review of the Qi 2 E1 dryer, which I bought with my own money, or check out how to make time lapses using your Bambu Lab A1, no matter what camera brand you have. Pretend that didn't happen.